Antonio, I'm glad to say, is part of the Swarm team. We are leveraging his extensive experience in business. And one of his passions includes IoT and data connected with IoT. Yes. So Antonio, are you with us? Yes, you are.
Yes,
okay.
I'm here.
Okay, yeah. So he will present some specifics around IoT data and the trends in this area. So hi, Antonio, and thank you. Please take over.
Hello. Thank you, Chert. Well, let me share my screen. There you go. Okay, so I guess that now you can see my presentation full screen. Okay, thank you so much. So my name is Antonio Gonzalo. I've been working in, actually worked at Swarm, but before Swarm, I was working for 12 years in Telefonica in the R+D department in IoT. So, well, IoT and new businesses, but IoT was the real hype of that. Yeah, and so I can provide a very deep knowledge, or I would say knowledge of the industry, of what happens there, what are the thoughts of hardware manufacturers on one side, and the guys that consume IoT devices on the other. So those two extremes are the ones that I can talk about. This presentation here is around data, about how IoT data is the only thing that can save IoT, and it has to be mixed in a place, in an ecosystem, in a world where the data could easily travel. And this is where Web3 or the actual crypto or blockchain technologies are up to. So mixing these three components, IoT, data, and Web3, we might be able to get to the place where we want to. So let's start here. Data is there's no secret. The data is becoming increasingly big. And the actual number of zettabytes, I'm lost of how I cannot actually conceptualize how much data is this. It's absolutely out of everybody's mind. It's growing that fast, and it's because not only because we create this data, but because devices create this data. With devices around us provides a constant influx of data that is stored or is processed somewhere elsewhere that we don't really know. But this is the actual key component that we have to capture, to actually dominate, to succeed in this field. So IoT is a promise, basically. IoT is a promise that everything will be interconnected, that all the objects that you see around you will be connected, will be talking among each other, and we're talking to you in a seamless way that is not very obtrusive to you, but it's actually, and it provides some liquid benefits, some liquid world where everything is fluid and goes with your wishes. And so that's the promise of IoT, but we are not getting there. And this is a trend that has happened for the last year. IoT is not really happening. It's actually broken. How is that? It all starts with this meme. It's actually a corporate meme from the Ericsson CEO in 2010. He says that he said that we were going to have 50 billion devices connected by 2020. 50 billion devices is 7 connected devices per person in the world, which is quite a lot. Not only him, but a lot of people just came afterwards to say the same discourse. Even, well, all those classical, so the usual suspects were giving forecasts that the range in the same direction. So we all expected a lot of devices and a lot of data to come of those devices by 2020. Did it happen? Well, no, it did not happen. And I took the actual work to find out how many devices were creating on a yearly basis, and going to these silicon waffles where the actual chips are manufactured. And what I found is that there are no more factories for creating devices. The number of devices created every year is mostly the same. There have been no new factories. So IoT is not really happening. We are not unleashing the power of connected things at all. It's just the same thing that is around us, because it's a complex thing. Actually, IoT is more complicated than just putting connectivity into a thing. This is one of the reasons why remotes are not yet universal. You have 5 or 6 remotes per household. And it's a complex mixture of things. It's a services, ecosystems. It's really, really complex. And the state of the art of IoT devices is this. This is an actual standalone device that provides data and serves for a utility. But this is, IoT is not exactly what you have in your wristband, because it's not self-sustainable. It's not a self entity. It depends on something else. And that ties the whole ecosystem. That creates the whole problem, because there is no, that simple thing that you need a hub to connect a thing creates the interoperability problem that I'm going to talk straight away. So why we have this this problem with the IoT is not working well? I'm going to go fast through this. First, of the costs. Imagine what is to store all the data, not only communicate, but to store all the data of those devices. In order to have it in a centralized fashion, such as the big players in the industry wants to, the amount of data warehouses that you will need to build is out of the charts. It's unbelievable. It really is huge. So it's not only communicating, but storing all those data, and of course manufacturing the devices. But we're getting there. The Moore's law is always in our favor. The second problem is security, and this is a crucial thing in all IoT devices. No, I don't have to speak about constant and permanent IoT leaks and IoT hacks. And I would like to point out that that security thing is a very dangerous thing. And just a brief anecdote of those two fellas here, that actually, those are the security engineer from Twitter and from IoT that hacked a Jeep in 2016, I think, to prove that the connected cars can be hacked. And for doing this, they went to Wired, to the actual magazine, and put a journalist over there. And you can see his face of terror when they cut the transmission out of the car in the middle of a highway. So the cars can be hacked, and the IoT devices are not secure. Actually, they ended up throwing him in a ditch. So the security not only is dangerous, it can also compromise our privacy altogether. And IoT devices are not at that place yet. They are still breakable. They're still hackable. Third problem is UX. This is a complete other realm of problems that comes from a design perspective, but they are completely and utterly absurd. I put some examples here from G0, or the toaster that actually reminds you to pay bills. Or this, and I love this one. This one is from the CES, from the last fair, that Samsung fridge that actually helps you tweet, because it's what I do when I go to fetch a glass of water. I tweet. So it just doesn't make sense. So from a design perspective, the ecosystem is also broken. And then we go. And the business model is absolutely broken. And this has to do a lot with data. The actual model that they follow is the current model that we follow for the Web 2, which is based on ads. And it's that incentive model of gathering data from users to sell ads has taken us to the place where we are, where big corporations actually permeate in our life, in everyday life, to gather the most information that they can in order to, as I said, sell ads. There's a lot of leaks in these IoT devices that, for instance, that Nest device from Google that had a hidden microphone that wasn't explicitly indicated anywhere, which is a way of concern. I don't know how to talk about a Cambridge Analytica and the idea that all the data of, for instance, health data is going to those companies, whether we like it or not. And as I said, everything to sell ads. And the last problem, I would say the bigger one, is the interoperability. I don't know if you know this little thing here, but it was intended to mix all the different devices from a house. Everything will be stored. It will be all the data from all different devices will be transformed through this single device into a unique hotspot where you can actually edit or play with this data. Well, this thing was considered by Forbes one of the revolution in the sector. It was then bought by Google and discontinued. it was closed. And the problem here is, why did they discontinue it? Well, they didn't say that. They didn't say why they discontinued this interoperability thing, but assumably it's because if you create interoperability, you actually leave a door open for others to profit on the data. In order to gather and to profit all those data, you need to close that door. It's complicated to create this interoperability. It's not an easy feature. Here, it's a brief screen of what are the different decisions that you have to make in order to create an IoT product, from casing to the protocols. Actually, the biggest problem, the biggest hurdle comes in this M2M IoT protocols, where everybody is using a different one. And as the old XKCD joke says, when you create a standard, another standard comes into place and replaces the old standard, so you have another standard. So there are so many standards around the globe that we actually, and this is dates from a couple of months ago, we have already 650 IoT platforms to create interoperability, which means that we are not creating interoperability at all in IoT. 620 platforms, of course, they are not all. You may know the most common ones from Amazon, from Google, those are the usual ones. Those are the generalistic, but there are a lot of platforms specifically tailored for several use cases. So there are so many IoT platforms that data is not stored. And of course, everybody wants to become the Facebook of IoT. That creates this interoperability problem that actually takes the industry back. So, and then it comes the Web3. The Web3 with the beautiful problem. Sorry, hold on, before that. And the problem with this interoperability, and I would say the biggest problem with that is that when you go to a company and you, for instance, for a smart city, and you want to sell street lamps, the first thing they ask you is, okay, how long is this contract? Because that street lamp needs to be there for 10 years, 15 years, 20 years. How long are you gonna keep the contract with me? What happens if the connectivity provider changes? What happens if things go south? Things have to be alive for a lot of time, a lot of years, and this interoperability is the main block in rock in the road, preventing to make that sale. It's complicated to make these sales to cities because of this, because of the length of the contracts that doesn't add up to or doesn't match the length of the intended devices that you are purchasing. So then crypto, Web3, and everything will be solved through crypto. Well, perhaps crypto has a good thing. Really, it provides a lot of multiple advantages that we can put into IoT, or multiple characteristics that can make it a better ecosystem, a better place. The IoT industry eliminates central points of failure, autonomy, and peer-to-peer autonomy. And this is, I would say, this is crucial. Integrity and traceability, another thing very important, identity and enabling microtransactions. So how does the crypto helps to solve IoT? Well, first, it reduces costs. And I would say that this is crucial. As I said before, costs, storing all the data from everybody in a single warehouse, it's something unbelievable. If we try to store all the economic transactions, it will be a real problem. If we want to store all the doors that are open, all the cars that are taken, all the coffees that are made every day on a daily basis, the data can be amazing. So how do we store it? Well, there's no other way but to store it in a decentralized fashion. That's the only way that all the data from all these devices can be stored. There's no possibility to make it in a centralized fashion. And this is, for instance, and please allow me to insert this slide, where Swarm has something to say, and it actually takes the storage to the borders. It actually takes the storage to the actual devices and replicates it in a way that it's sustainable. This is a really plausible way to store all that IoT data. Another problem that actually solves crypto is the integrity and fault tolerance through security by transparency and not through obscurity. this is solved, and of course, because through cryptographic keys. And I'm not going into this, but there are a lot of people or companies that are actually working on this matter. As Lockheed, that is known for multiple reasons, and now rebranded to a blockchains.com. I think it's now the name. They have this. They are following this trend. Following this idea of having the identity, of having the actual firmware updates and everything well tailored, so that the incentives from different things are aligned, and there is no. And you can actually download a firmware with enough guarantees that it's not tampered in an offline and on-sync, off-chain way, off-chain fashion. So you don't have to be strictly connected to the blockchain to download it, which is quite valuable, I would say. And then we go to interoperability. And interoperability, there are a lot of companies, well, I would say around 6 or 7, that are claiming that the crypto will help interoperability between things. And I am not that sure about that, because well, I put here 2 examples. Chain of Things, that is actually has one of the advisors, is Vitalik Buterin, has 2 use cases: 2, supply chain and solar panels. And this is why it's very hard to store in one blockchain as I said, all the transactions that happen to things. So the amount of data can grow exponentially. So this is why they are keeping it short, or keeping it constrained to 2 use cases, and trying to make it fly with this. And then IOTA, who has a different approach into blockchain. It's not, as you know, IOTA is not strictly a blockchain. It's what it's called a tangle. And I would say that this is a more pragmatic approach into having a blockchain into this world. This is what a tangle looks like, and well, it has several states, so it has some adaptation periods for the things to confirm the transaction and all this. But does it solve interoperability? No, it does not. What this thing does is basically create a transport layer, but it's not enough. Data, it's still not interoperable. The data is not still shared. It's just like TCP/IP did for our computers. It actually creates a transport layer for things, which is valuable, but not enough to create interoperability with data. So this is where the last part comes, and is the business model. The business model using Web3, what is it going to be with data? Is it going to be ads again? Well, it's hopefully not. So the way, and this is where I leave it open, because it's food for thought. How do we create a new business model with this data? Well, the way that from the last problem of IoT that I mentioned, we didn't solve the UX. We can take UX and data and create something that can actually be valuable to break those silos. So it will start, and I'll give you a vector. So starting enforcing functional value in things, and this is a slide that I like to put because it's very designish, and it comes from a guy I used to work with, and he saw that the things that are around us empower us as a human beings. So things that are connected are even more powerful, and that's how the functional value has to grow. But where it has to point, and this is the thing, well, it has to point breaking data silos. The only thing that can travel those silos is data. The only thing that can travel use cases is data. Is the only component that can travel. For instance, if I go, and this is not yet solved, if I buy a theater ticket, and I go to the city center, I still don't have the ability to have a parking space for me, where they know exactly where at the time that I'm going to be there. Breaking those data silos in the different layers that they are, because interoperability is not just technical interoperability. There are several, as you know, several layers. Breaking those silos is the only, through data, and expanding the functional value of the things is the only way to create those use cases that people will use and will flourish in this ecosystem. And it's a game of costs. We need to break those costs with these use cases. They need to be powerful enough so it's accessible, and the economic flow comes from places that we haven't thought of. I'm going to give you some examples. Those are examples that you already know, but let's so that you follow my line of thoughts. The first one is the Kindle, which is basically not a book. It's not an electronic reader. Something more. It's a bookstore. It's a bookstore, and within the Amazon realms, it's confined. But if you take this information and make it fly, it's even bigger. Tesla. Well, I'm not going to go to Tesla because it's not only a car; it's much more than that. The Nest thermostat that actually controls your temperature. The idea of that green leaf over there was to sync all high consumption devices in your neighborhood so that the actual electricity bill, the electricity consumption is flatter, it's more flat. And the electricity companies like that and provide you with discounts. And that thinking out of the box, it actually has only to do with data. And the last one is, well, just those. Amazon has the same idea of mailbox for reverse shipping that actually can be used for selling things. It can be used as a selling point. So the idea would be to take that thing, connect it, and empower them in other data realms that are not initially thought of. And if you need inspiration for that, well, you just need to go to Madison Avenue, where you will find that the things have already soul and moral. So going to these ethics and the souls and the branding that actually the marketed people put into things, you can actually come into an idea of how to empower a coffee shop, a coffee maker, a coffee machine into a way that I can actually serve people. So once we get into this, once we arrive to this realm where the data can be shared into different layers and different places, creating new use cases, in the crypto space, we'll arrive to this Proplets, which is a Nick Szabo thought about 20 years ago, about the IoT, where they say that the things have to be autonomous, and once they are autonomous, they know who owns it, where's in space time, communicate securely, and recognize other things around. Putting everything together, it's only possible in Web3, and this is how Web3 empowers IoT and can solve it. But we are not that yet. We are not there yet. So this is what I would like to tell you. The hardware costs, which is the first thing that comes to our mind, it's already being solved. I don't think it's just a matter of time. More is our side, but it is not the abstract world, the data thing. It's still fixed and still siloed. And then we'll arrive, as I said before at the very beginning, into a place where the customer, where the actual user is in the center. The things create liquid markets around us, and everything is highly customizable. And this is what I wanted to tell you. I will end up with a quote from William Gibson that I just love. And that was it. Thank you so much. If you have any questions, I'll be happy to answer.
Thank you, Antonio. That was very lively, and I'm not sure if it was optimistic about IoT or not, but definitely.
It's realistic, I would say.
Realistic, yes. So yes, questions, please. I'll just wait 5 seconds because maybe somebody's typing. Otherwise, I'll be selfish again, and I'll just. So in connection with cities, so the IoT devices there, so you mentioned street lamps and things like that, but what will appear first in cities? So what's the use case?
The use case in cities, well, actually the cities wanted to save money to have efficiencies. That's all they ask for. I haven't met. I was actually working with some conversations with some of them, and the only thing that they worried about was waste management and saving water and all that, which are good things. They are good things to start with, but they're not game changing. They are not what they wanted at the very end from a smart city perspective and with data was to being able to switch providers in an easy way but not actually share the data or control or create a more beautiful or more, how to say, a more powerful ecosystem of connected things or connected data. It was basically saving money and being able to switch providers fast and effective. So data has not were little to do with them.
So we have a question. So how does 5G affect Internet of Things?
5G is an optimization for IoT. The idea is, as I said, there are costs all around IoT, from hardware to plenty of layers, and connectivity is one of them. It's I had these fights back in the day, how it's unbearable that we still don't leverage, like Telefonica or any operator don't leverage SMS to communicate with things. But anyway, 5G, it's a more efficient way and channel to create those wireless, and from a broader perspective, the things are very, very confined and they don't speak in a wider sense. So how to say? So 5G offers this long range communication and a very cost-effective way that we don't have, that things still don't have. And this is why on your Apple Watch you need a SIM card, full SIM card with a full for a person, almost like SIM card, increasing the costs.
Okay, thank you. So we'll move forward since we're short on time. Thank you for the presentation and your answers.